Through the Leadership Lens is sponsored by Irish Propane Corporation, serving Western and Central New York. For all your residential and commercial propane needs, choose Irish Propane. Irish Propane is a locally operated, New York State certified, woman-owned business. For more information, visit irishpropane.com. Irish Propane delivers peace of mind.
Hello and welcome to another Through the Leadership Lens, a podcast presented by the Women in Propane Council. I am Freddie Riddler.
And I am Bridget Kidd. And today we are so excited to have our guest, Christina Grabo, Director of Sales at Blue Star Gas. Blue Star Gas is on the West Coast, but Christina is joining us from Washington State. Christina, welcome to our show. We're so happy to have you here.
Thank you so much, Bridget and Freddie. Lovely to see you both, and I'm excited to chat with you today.
Yeah, so as you know, we talk about leadership on this podcast, as well as many other topics. So to get us started, would you be willing to tell us a little bit about what you do with Blue Star Gas and maybe wrap that up with what leadership means to you?
Absolutely. So I've been with Blue Star for, it'll be 8 years at the end of this month, and spent the first 6.5 years of my career with the company focusing almost exclusively on our auto gas business. Was a newbie to the propane industry when I joined, and have had the opportunity to learn a lot from all of the people on our team who have so many decades of experience. I've been in the director of sales role since July of 2021. And I manage the sales team across the 5 states that we operate in. So about a dozen people.
Yeah, right. So you've got a lot of people that you're leading. And what does leadership mean to you when you think about it?
Well, being new to a formal leadership role when I started in this position, leadership to me has really meant serving my team and helping them to succeed and grow. I think that leadership is very different than management, although certainly managing people is part of the role. I feel like my primary responsibility is to help each person on my team be the best that they can be and provide the support to them that they tell me that they need. I want to, instill confidence in them and empower them to, take a leap of faith and get out of their comfort zone. Mm-hmm. So I think part of that for me is that leadership is really leading by example. They need to know that when I ask something of them or I hold them to a standard, that I'm not asking anything that I wouldn't hold myself to. And part of that for me is being accountable to them, just like I expect accountability from each member of my team. It's, if they say they need something or I ask them how I can support them, then following up and doing it and making sure that they know that I'm in their corner.
Yeah. And that's great. Thank you. So I wrote down serving, a team, right? That's what leadership's about. It's about more than just one person. It's a whole group of people. And it's a 2-part question. Could you give us an example of when you served a team or when you were that mentor for that team where they looked up to you, where there was trust involved, where they said, Christina, here's a project we want you to do, or here's some process we want you to put in place. Could you give us an example of how you led that team? And then the second part of that question is, has that leadership responsibility, that role changed since COVID to now?
Yeah, I mean, there's, a few examples that I can think of where I've had the opportunity to help, maybe where one of the salespeople was struggling with moving a project forward. And they had been working really hard and building a rapport with the prospect, but they needed just a little support to make it happen. Whether that's, going and visiting that potential customer with them, or giving them pointers on things that have worked for me, Or in one case recently, we brought in, our director of operations, and we brought in our construction manager and the salesperson and myself. And we were able to really wow that customer and show them the knowledge and the expertise that we have to offer, and help to win that opportunity for her. So that's one example. Does that kind of answer the question, Freddie?
Yeah. And you said, you had to go in and help that personnel. With COVID, it changed. Right now we do podcasts over these Zoom calls. So, has it changed? Is it as easy as just walking into somebody's office now and assisting them, or do we have to use other tools? How has leadership changed between pre-COVID and after COVID?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I think the way that we interact with people still is very different depending on what region you're in. And even on the West Coast, there's some areas where you can, walk right in just like you could pre-2020. And there's some areas where, their office is still closed to the public. So really you have to adapt to your surroundings and be prepared for any scenario. But in terms of how my leadership style has changed throughout COVID, so I wasn't in a formal leadership role until, fairly late in the pandemic, back when, things had largely reopened. But I can say that as just as a colleague, and, I've always kind of viewed myself as a leader on one level. I, try to raise the bar in the standards that I hold for myself, and ask the same of my colleagues, whether they report to me or not. And, encourage people and, try to unite and collaborate and whatnot. But initially, when everything shut down in March of 2020, I wasn't in a formal leadership role. And I went from a position where I was, I was customer facing sales. I was out in the field every day. I was in the office interacting with my colleagues who I adored. And all of a sudden we were stuck at home for months and months. And it rocked my world. I mean, it was the most challenging time that I've ever been through in my life. And, there was so much uncertainty. None of us knew what was going to happen, if we were all going to be okay, what was going to happen with the economy. And I think going through that experience and recognizing that, so many people, I think we made ourselves vulnerable to one another in a lot of ways. And people who, myself included, who had never felt, anxious a day in their life, were struggling with feeling, anxiety and uncertainty, and we needed one another. So for me, what that did, I think, is create a little bit more empathy in the way that I interact with my colleagues and now with my team, where, I understand that, we're all here to do a job, and that job is really important. And I know I'm surrounded by people who share that deep dedication to the company that we're part of, to the Blue Star family. But in addition to being, all here to do a job, we're also human beings with lives and emotions and fears. And so it's really allowed me to, now that I have to be part of sometimes addressing really tough issues with personnel, with people, with humans, understanding that things aren't always how they look on the exterior, and to really take a step back and say, what might this person be struggling with, and how can I help them work through it? Not that I'm their therapist by any means. How can I demonstrate empathy and help them move through that and grow from it, and be better as a person and as a professional. So that's kind of how
Christina, I think there's a lot of themes in there that we've talked about on the podcast, and especially, as you look at people who have progressed in their careers, right? And you certainly, you weren't in the propane industry, and then you were in sales in one channel, and now you're in the role that you're in. And you're talking, to me, I hear you saying you're leading more with empathy. You're more of a servant leader than like a transformational leader, and that sort of thing, which I admire and relate to a lot. But I'm wondering if you can talk about those people whose leadership you model, and have you had experiences in the propane industry or outside the propane industry? And can you tell us about it when you were like, oh, I want to be like that person because of the impact they had on me or anybody else?
Yeah. So one of the most impactful leaders that I can remember working with was back when I was 21 years old, and I worked in the restaurant industry. I worked in hospitality for a number of years, which taught me a lot of really great life lessons.
I bet.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of stories I'll share with you someday. But this particular leader, was very, she was a cheerleader, but she also was not afraid to have the tough conversations with you if you screwed up. And I remember one night that it was just a really intense night, and something went wrong. I can't remember all these years and years later, but at the end of the night, she sat down and she opened a bottle of champagne, which of course always, gets people talking. And she said, "Hey, you do a great job, and this is what I admire about you. But I noticed you struggled with this tonight. What's going on? How can I help you work through it?" Mm-hmm. And just that empathy of knowing that she wasn't angry at me because I screwed up, but she wanted to help me learn and grow from it is something that has followed me throughout my career, and certainly now. Absolutely.
So, Christina, we kind of shared what inspires you, or I'm sorry, who, but now let me ask the question, what inspires you? And you can't say a bottle of wine.
Sometimes that inspires me after a really long time. But, another, and I'll kind of tie this into your last question as well. I've had a number of incredible leaders who have, brought me up in the propane industry, all the way from, the owner of our company, Jeff Stewart, who has invested in me and has been in many ways a mentor to me, even though he's the busiest man I've ever known in my life. But little things like, hadn't been trained in something with our accounting program and needed to look something up. And he jumped on Zoom and said, "I'm going to show you right now," hands-on, empowering me with the tools that I needed to, be better at my job. And there's, people on our executive team who have been in the industry for, decades and decades and have, just a wealth of propane knowledge that they've shared with me, and they're patient and, never make me feel like I'm, you should know this. They're just they give freely of their knowledge. So as far as what inspires me in my current role, I think part of it is the family-owned aspect of our company and what we do. I have worked for companies in the past where I felt like I was a number, or I was, replaceable, disposable. And the family environment and the way that, we're treated is inspiring to me and makes me want to impart and continue the legacy that the company has built over the last, 85 years. So that inspires me. I'm inspired every day by the people on my team, the people that I'm leading, who I see. I could give you so many examples, but especially over the last, I would say, 6 to 9 months, since we've all kind of meshed a little bit better. It takes time for people to get used to each other. Mm-hmm. Watching how some of them are just, flourishing and, again, getting out of their comfort zones and really just achieving so much success that makes them feel proud and energized and motivated.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. What do you do? Because there's always that forming of a team, right? And you go through all of the stages, which are some more pleasant than others. But now that you're kind of in your groove with your team, for lack of a better word, how do you envision maintaining that and keeping people motivated? And in fairness, there's a lot of, certainly out on the West Coast, right? There's a lot of potential negative language out there. There's a lot of negative feelings about the industry that we all love. So what's your plan on maintaining that motivation and dedication of the team that now seems to be kind of hitting it on all cylinders?
I think the principle that I am always reminding myself of is that I am by no means the smartest person in the room, on our team, in our meetings. That each of the people on my team have really unique skill sets and so much knowledge. And so I really encourage them to collaborate with one another. We're across a massive market area, even just being in 5 states. I think, I know it's grown, but the last number that I saw was that we served like 75,000 square miles. And to have a dozen salespeople, spread across that, it's not easy to be in one place physically. But I like to remind people that, hey, okay, you have questions about water heaters. Brian is really knowledgeable about water heaters. Give him a call. I know he'll love to help you. I have a couple people on my team that I rely on to help, kind of share a lot of the technical knowledge that I wasn't exposed to as much being in the auto gas segment specifically. There's a lot of things tied to our commercial industrial sales that sometimes, or residential, that I know that somebody on my team is going to be able to help them better than I can. And so it's, creating that sense of we can all collaborate with one another, even though we're, hundreds or thousands of miles away, lean on one another, talk, communicate, collaborate, and we're all better for it.
Yeah. Sure. Everyone has that specific role, in a good team. You don't have to know everything. You just have to know enough and to rely, and then trust. Trust is one, a word that we hear quite a bit when people talk about leadership, is you have to trust one another. And that's when you know you have a good team, is when you can trust each other with questions and answers and help. So Christina, talking to shift it a little bit here with leadership, sometimes you have to make that risky decision, right? Sometimes you have to sit and think, this decision I'm about to make, is it going to help things? Is it going to make things worse? Is it the right decision? Can you share with us a story where you had to make a risky decision?
Oh boy, I struggle with risky decisions, Freddie. I am a by the book rule follower, and I think I probably need to take risks a little more often, but I typically, if I'm uncertain about a risk, I usually call in reinforcements, phone a friend and ask for advice from someone I respect. But I think in little ways, we take risks every day. Sometimes it's taking a chance on, when you're hiring for a position, taking a chance on a candidate who maybe on paper doesn't have the industry experience that you ideally would want. But, picking out the little details about how they interact and the way that, they really think about an interview question and are thoughtful in their response, and then look at how that will translate over into interfacing with their potential customers. That's one that I took a while back that paid off greatly. I mean, this new hire has really proven to be an amazing addition to our team. So that's one example, but I don't have a lot, because like I said, I'm a rule follower.
That's good, but I think that's such an important one in a leader, where you can recognize those qualities or competencies in someone and say, hey, maybe you knew your team needed those pieces, and they can fill that. And it's an important risk to take. What about Christina, do you have any advice or suggestions as somebody like myself, who was from outside of the propane industry, oftentimes it can feel a little bit daunting because there are so many people who've been in this industry for so long. Any advice you have on those people who are kind of new to the industry or considering coming into the industry on how to break down some of those nerves?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the first thing that I always try to remind myself is I bring something unique to the table. Even though I don't have the propane experience, I might have some other quality or some type of experience that brings a fresh perspective to our team. And I can say on a personal level that having had, I worked in hospitality and I worked in real estate, which is a very, relationship driven industry. I created very tight bonds with my customers. And so I have brought a perspective of customer service that, and don't get me wrong, our company in general has, a very, very strong focus on our customer experience. It's what drives us. But I've had some different experiences that can lend to, contributing to that. The other piece of advice I would give to a newcomer in the industry is be willing to learn from anyone and everyone that you work with. Our drivers, our service techs, our CSRs, our, the managers, everyone has something to contribute, and just soak it up and allow yourself to be molded and to learn from everyone, and you'll be just fine in the end.
That's such a great perspective to have. It's very refreshing to hear you talk about that, because I think sometimes you can think, you have your eye on, oh my gosh, I need to absorb it from the owner or, whoever's above you. But it's really important to remember a lot of those people see, a different side of the industry or a different side of customers that without those conversations, you'd really be making ill-informed decisions, really.
That's a great thing about these podcasts is it allows other viewers to experience that same content as well. So we talked a lot about work, leadership in the office, leadership around the business. Leadership can also be seen in the community. So could you share some of the things that you do for the community, you or your business, that kind of falls into the leadership where people, look up to your company, look up to you for the things that you're doing around you outside your office?
Yeah, a couple of ways. One, I try to, Bridget, you mentioned earlier the challenges that we're facing on the West Coast with regulatory language and whatnot. I try to advocate for, fuel agnostic approach whenever possible, because I think that it's truly the right thing for us as a society, to not put all our eggs in one basket. So I'm involved in, kind of spreading the word about what our legislators are working on, and my perspective on that. Because I think, having multiple perspectives is really beneficial when so much of our news media is focused on one narrow solution. So that's from kind of a work aspect. And then on a personal level, I'm kind of known as the mama bear. If I see someone who needs a friend or, just seems like they're going through a tough time, just trying to show kindness and take them under my wing is kind of it's always been my MO. My husband and I don't have children. We have 2 fur babies. They would probably protest to that, but I don't want children. I'm very content with my life, but I do love kind of being that kind of nurturing mother figure to people who need it, no matter how old they are. So.
Yeah, everybody needs that. A little bit of that. That's wonderful. Are we ready, Freddie, to switch into a little bit more fun? Not that this hasn't been fun. This has been very fun.
I think so. So we call this the whip round, women in propane round. Just Bridget and I are going to go through, ask a fun question or two or three or four. Unfortunately, the list that we gave you to get ready for this round is not the questions we're using. So you're like, of course.
Sneak attack.
Well, yep, here we go. So we'll just get it started. Bridget, why don't you start off this round?
I will ask you, what is the best advice you've been given?
Oh gosh. I would say, so I grew up always kind of having a vision of how I wanted my life to be and what I wanted to do with my life. And, you know, after the economic crisis, whatever you want to call it, of 2007, 2008, I was in real estate. You know, it was really crazy time. It wasn't, I stuck with it for many years after, but it was really tough seeing what everyone went through and so many of my clients that I cared deeply about. And it got to the point where, you know, work-life balance was really tough and I just was not feeling it. And I've always been kind of an overachiever. I think I was about to turn 30 at the time. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't start over, which makes me laugh now. But I remember having a conversation with my husband, who usually is not the best, like, he's more introverted. He's not a, you know, big conversationalist, but he said to me, like, if it doesn't make you happy, find something else that you love to do. And I was like, but I can't start over. I've invested so much in this. And he really pushed me to, you know, figure out what I would love to do with my life. And, you know, even though it might take time to excel in it, to just take a leap of faith. I guess that's a risk. So there's an example for you, Freddie. But
there you go.
I did it. And, you know, I took my time kind of thinking about what I wanted my daily work environment to be like, the kind of people I wanted to be surrounded with. And here I am. And I'm so, so glad I took that advice.
So your husband talked to your 30-year-old self and gave that 30-year-old self advice.
Mm-hmm.
A question we like to ask is, if you were to go back in time and talk to your 16-year-old self, what advice would you have given Christina at the age of 16?
Let's say, always be true to yourself. Don't try to be who you think somebody wants you to be. And always advocate for yourself. I think I say this to people all the time, like, nobody else is going to stand up for you the way that you will. So make your voice heard.
That's great.
Great.
That's awesome. What about if you had a superpower? What would that superpower be?
Oh my goodness. I don't know. I think maybe with as much as I travel, maybe to like transport myself from one place to the other.
To bypass an airport?
Yes. More family time, more fur baby time.
Yes. I immediately thought of like getting more sleep. And that would help me achieve that goal, right?
Yeah.
You know, you don't have to sit in an airport, don't have to spend that time on a plane.
Yeah, just get there.
Mm-hmm.
So here's a question that's not on the list, Bridget.
Okay.
Maybe you don't want to answer this one, Christina. Who do you miss more, your fur babies or your husband when you travel? Or maybe you don't want to answer that one.
I mean,
there's a big pause there.
I miss them both equally.
Of course you do.
I talk to my husband on the phone. It's a little hard to do that with the cats. So
yeah, oh, that's funny. What about, could you describe yourself in one word?
I think some of the people in my life would agree with this. I would say intense.
Mm-hmm. Like that.
Yeah, me too. So if there was a book about your life, what would the title be? This is always one that makes our guests really think.
I can see why.
We come back to that question.
I think it would be a really long title because I think I'm kind of a complicated person, but gosh, probably something along the lines of, did she just say that?
I love that.
I am
Christina, that's
speaking my
great.
mind.
I love that. All right, I have one more. What is your ideal vacation?
Oh, that's super easy. Picture like white sandy beach, palm trees, definitely an umbrella. Just like nothing planned. My husband and I went on a vacation a few years ago where we did exactly that. We just laid on the beach the entire time. And we don't do that often. It's usually, what can we see? Where can we go? What can we do? But I think
sounds
that's
lovely.
where
A place to recharge.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Yep. Well, I'm done with questions. Bridget, do you have any more for Christina?
No, I don't, but I really appreciated your time and getting to chat with you.
Yes, thank you for joining the podcast, Christina.
Likewise. Great speaking with both of you.
I'm Freddie Riddler.
And I'm Bridget Kidd. Thanks for listening.
Through the Leadership Lens, presented by Women in Propane. Be sure to subscribe, download, and share with a friend. To learn more about Women in Propane, visit us on Facebook, Instagram, or online at www.womeninpropane.org.